I think we might have someone coming to speak to us, Daniel Routledge, on the phone, I believe. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Daniel. How's it going?
Not too bad, thanks.
Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I've been speaking to you, obviously, during the week, and there's obviously been a blog post that's kind of exploded about the history of the BBL and kind of the financial side of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite an amazing response. I've had, obviously, through the social media, once you tweeted out the link to that, everything seemed to go crazy. But I actually had a lot of people come up to me. I was at a couple of games over the weekend and said they really appreciated the history lesson. It is interesting because when you asked me to come on last week, the first thing I thought about was the history of the sport and how we got here, because some of the things that you see people proposing for the future are things that we might have done 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and weren't all that successful. And I think it's helpful to understand the context of what's been tried in the past before we consider what should be tried in the future.
So do you think that some of the things that have been mentioned won't work? Is that kind of what you're gathering from what's happened in the past?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I obviously haven't seen this plan that's been put forward with this 35, 36, 40 million, whatever it is. So it's hard to judge something based on that. But first of all, you look at it and say, well, 36 million, what is that for? Because on one level it says facilities. Well, we know that Leicester are building an arena as we speak now. That's £4.5 million that's going to cost. So £36 million doesn't get you very many facilities if you spent it just on that. Another thing says it's about putting teams into arenas and playing in front of bigger crowds. Well, BBL 1990s showed you that that's a quick way of losing millions of pounds. And the other thing is then in bringing back, it said the British players. Obviously, we already have, 4 or 5 of the GB team playing in the BBL. So I'm assuming you're talking about the likes of Pops, because Joel Freeland and Luol Deng aren't going to leave the NBA to come back here. In which case, again, that's another way of spending money, but I don't see where the income comes from it. And that's ultimately, I would imagine whoever's got the £36 million to invest, it's about getting a return on the income, return on the investment, sorry, and I just don't see how you can do that in 4, 5, 6 years' time on a £36 million investment on any sport in this country, never mind basketball. I mean, I look at rugby union, as I outlined in the post, and most of those clubs are losing millions of pounds every year, the exceptions being the bigger clubs, the Leicesters, the Northamptons, to some extent Gloucesters, and they make their money from their stadium, not from what goes on the pitch.
How's kind of the article run down within the BBL? Obviously, you work for them.
Yeah, I mean, I've had positive feedback from everybody I've spoke to, both within the BBL, players, coaches, administrators have come up to me and said they really liked what I'd put out there. And as I say, it was written in part because I know there aren't many people like me who've been around the game all their lives and of my age, sort of thing. A lot of people have come into the game in recent years and they just won't know about the history of it. And you know, if you don't understand where you've come from, you can make mistakes in where you're going to go forward. And there is that sort of perception, again, going back to the quotes that I've seen related to this plan, is the million people who have a passion for basketball in this country, and 2.5 million rated in their top 2 or 3 sports, 15 million like basketball, whatever the figures were, which just, it doesn't quite stack up to me, that, because if you look at the APS data that came out the other week, it said 130,000 people thereabouts play basketball once a week. If you added up everybody, if every team in the league, every league, National League, Scottish League, BBL, had a home game this weekend and had their best crowd of the season, equaled their best crowd of the season, my guesstimate on that would be 25 to 30,000 people, that would be. And then you look at the numbers for TV viewership for the NBA, and that's 4,000 to 5,000 they get for their games. Even for the game at the O2, which is in our time zone, that was 15,000 people watched that, according to the Barb figures. So when you start to add all that up, what you come up with is 200,000 people, if you're rounding up and triple counting the way I am, 200,000 people that have engaged with basketball at some level in any given week. And you sort of think, well, if 1 million have a passion for the game, what are the other 800,000 doing? Are they watching League Pass and playing NBA 2K? You see where I'm going with that? I'm not quite sure that number stacks up. And if your basis of that number being those 1 million people are going to turn up into your arena and pay £25 to go to watch the game, I just can't follow the maths on that.
It's been badly handled, isn't it? Surely the way that the public kind of press releases have been chucked out there without the other party's knowledge.
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, it's really frustrating because I would say over the last 3-4 years, certainly in the last 18 months or so, since the whole funding issue for Great Britain basketball came out, that basketball has never been closer as a group, pretty much forever, for as long as I can remember, where you've got the different interested parties working together, seemingly coming closer and closer together, seeing that, you know, a rising tide floats all boats, and it's in everybody's interest to have the same goal. And then this came out kind of out of left field. That's the thing, is it looked from the outside like everything was starting to come together. We've got more exposure at a political level than we've ever had in the history of the game, largely off the back of the GB funding, but also off the back of the All Parliamentary Party Group's report, which was based in a large part on work that BBL clubs do, but also into the national leagues. And everything seemed to be going positively, and then this is just like a bit of a kaboom underneath everything, which seemed unnecessary. It's like, if all this is going on, let it go on in the background, you all sort it all out, and then come and tell the rest of us what the final decision is. I mean, at least we have seen the press release today came out from the BBL, which said they've had a meeting with Basketball England yesterday, and you know that seemed positive from what came out of that press release. We can only hope that that's, you know, getting us back on the right track. But you're absolutely right. The last thing the sport needed was what's happened over the last week, 10 days.
In terms of BBLTV, obviously you're commentating there. Do you think that's been a success or a failure?
I think it's, to be honest with you, I think it's the future of sport outside of, you know, the big couple of sports now. I mean, we saw today football just hoovering up billions of pounds, another £5 billion for the TV rights just domestically, let alone they've still got the international rights to sell. And I think what that does is it makes life very difficult for any sport that isn't football. And I would include even, to some extent, the bigger sports, the crickets, the rugbies, and the golf, who are already getting millions out of pay TV. I think they're going to find their margins are going to be squeezed because somebody's got to pay for that £5 billion. There's a limit to how far you can get that out of customers, and therefore anybody who's not making money, and making money for TV is selling subscriptions, is going to find it very difficult to get on TV. So actually, the BBL TV model, whether that's through a paid subscription or a YouTube channel or however these things work, I think is actually the future for the smaller sports in this country, simply because the finances will not be there through the TV because they're putting all their eggs into one basket. It's an exciting time, but it's also an unnerving time because it's something that I don't think sport in this country is ready for. But certainly the internet's ready for it. Certainly the population is ready for it. The younger generation is ready for it. There's some guy out there making 6 figures a year playing Minecraft videos on YouTube. I don't know how he makes money, but my 9-year-old son watches his videos every day. So that's, you know, that's the way my son interacts with TV and with media, is through YouTube and on his iPod and all of these sort of things. So actually, that's how we're going to have to turn things around. I think how you monetize it is going to be a big question for a sport like basketball. But to my mind, it has to be the future. They still have a ways to go on it, no doubt about it. But it has to be the way forward, I would have thought.
You raised some good points there, Dan. Hi, it's Dave here. What would you say overall is probably next for the BBL? What is that next step? I mean, let's say you have that £32 million now. What would you do with it? The first thing you would do?
Well, I would, if it was me, I would, and I had.
You can't go on holiday with it.
It was £36 million I could give away. I would go and build 8 venues because I would expect to see no financial return from it, but the legacy that I would build in those 8 venues in 8 cities would be worth it to me. Give me that inner glow. That's not very smart business. Actually, I think the future is what we're seeing happening in Leicester, where a club builds its own arena that it has control over, that is basketball specific, which gives them the opportunity to use it for basketball purposes, both grassroots and young elite level, whatever the term is for that, underage national team sort of level. And that grows the game at that level and then gives the club the ability to make its own money back through secondary spend on game nights and through whatever other revenue they can pull in during the week. I think that's the future. I know Newcastle are looking at something like that. Obviously, Cheshire have a new venue, which I saw pictures on the internet today of, which is starting to come together. I'm not quite sure what the deal is with them and their usage, but certainly owner-occupy is the future. I mean, you see it at Worcester. The advantage that gives them with their tie-in with the university and using that venue can't be underestimated. And I think really the way to grow the game in this country is to have venues like that. If we can have 3 courts that are in use all day, every day for developing the game, and then on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night they use in front of 2,500, 3,000 people for a BBL game or whatever you want to call the top division game, then that to me is the way forward. I think anything else, trying to drop things into arenas, is just a way of burning money. And actually what you'll do is by creating your secondary spend, you'll get the better players in, you'll bring the higher level British players that you're trying to bring back into this country. Although I must say I don't have a problem with Pops playing in Greece or Turkey or any of these, or Dan Clark playing in Spain. I think that's good for the game in this country. I think it's bad for British football that more British players don't go play abroad. I think it's great for British basketball they do. But if you want to bring those people back, then you can build it up, then you can play in European competition. Newcastle are good enough to play in European competition with the team they have right now. They just can't get a venue on a Wednesday night. So, you know, that's the thing. That's the way you'll grow the reputation of the league, is by having your own venue and being able to use it all day, every day.
All right, Daniel. Well, thank you for coming on. We've got to go to an ad break now, but thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Cheers.
Daniel.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. See you after the break.